Okay, so you know those videos where the mechanic shows his dirty hands and then he shows his wife's pretty done nails and he's like, mine look like this, so hers can look like this. Well, I look like this because my soul looks like this. Black gold. And this is exactly what we're going to talk about today. Tilling versus the no-till method, why I do the no-till method, and I've got plenty of pictures and video evidence to back up my claims. The sun's doing this weird mustache thing. Anyways, let's get into it. You'll have to excuse my walls because I am the crazy plant lady that has, huge sticky notes all over her wall with loads and loads of gardening information. So I've kind of got me an outline here because I love to chit chat. I'm a certified yapper and I want to stay on topic for you guys, but I just want to deep dive on this no-till method, exactly how I do it, why I do it, the benefits of it, in hopes that maybe it'll convince you to go that route. It is an easier method in my opinion. It's cheaper in my opinion, and a little less work on the back in my opinion. I could be wrong though. So let's first touch on some topics of why I do the no-till method. So I grew up in Eastern Arkansas. There's a lot of industrial farming over there. There's a lot of tilling. And one thing that I noticed when I would look at, these big time gardeners and their beautiful gardens, and then I would compare it to the soil that I was seeing with industrial farming, the biggest thing that stood out to me was that very gray, just dead looking soil compared to garden soil that was like black and rich, and you could just smell the petrichor off of it. And that led me down a deep dive rabbit hole one night, and I ended up watching a YouTube Back to Eden Gardening, and from there it was downhill. I made the complete swap to all organic and no-till. Now the benefits are just numerous, but some of the biggest benefits that I've seen are less soil erosion, less compaction issues, especially for you folks like me that live in Arkansas and you have a lot of that clay soil. A couple of other benefits: the living organisms, something you don't see in that very gray, very compacted, very dead soil. The hair is wild today. The information will be solid. And some of the downsides to tilling is, number one, is erosion. Another thing that happens is when we scratch the surface of the soil like that or till it, we kill a lot of beneficial organisms. Another thing that tends to happen is your noxious weeds that are really weeds, not the medicinal ones like dandelion. They're going to grow back first. They're going to leach onto that soil, that very dead soil. Think of it like a sore. The skin wants to scab up to kind of repair itself. Well, that's exactly what the soil does when you go to ripping into it, right? So in all honesty, since 2021, when I made the swap from tilling to no-till, I have less issues with weeds and grass than I did when I tilled. Yeah. So I'm going to take you out to the garden and I'm going to show you some of my garden soil on the rental property. And then I'm going to flash forward and we're going to go out to the land that was this past weekend. And I'm going to show you my no-till method in action. Yeah, dig down there and show us what this soil looks like. It's probably going to be better if you go out towards the middle. That's my walkway, so it's probably a little compacted. But turn that over. So this is my pre-existing garden here on the rental property. And right away, as you can see, this soil is not compacted. It's very light and loamy. Loamy garden soil consists of 40% sand, 40% silt, and 20% clay. Now, when I started out, this is all clay and shell rock. But look at her now. Absolute black gold. Now, the parts of the garden I'm pointing at are some of the oldest parts, so the soil is a lot richer. There's been a lot more organic material, but over here by the yarrow plant is some of the newest portions of the garden. I'm having Joey turn over some dirt here, and that's the most this dirt's probably ever been turned, is by transplanting or planting vegetables in it. But as you can see, this is just 1 to 2 seasons worth of organic material. And this stuff is rich and loamy. Now, you'll notice the clay content on this newer side of the garden is a little bit higher because less organic material has been put onto this soil. I've only planted on this side of the garden for 2 seasons versus the other that I've been planting in since 2019 and 2020. And a side-by-side comparison, as you see, it's a lot darker, a lot richer, a lot more loamier. Meaning, gardens take years of work. Don't expect results overnight. The more and more that I've worked this garden, the better it has become, the bigger the harvest have become, the richer the soil has become. So everything that I'm pointing at are things that I would normally just chop and drop. I would not pull root systems out. I always chop and drop. I'm going to take you to another portion of the garden that I actually just started on, I think about last year. That's right by this tree. It was really bare. There was nothing growing here. It was dead soil. I did the no-till method 1 season, and you see Joey's probably digging about 6 to 8 inches down. Look how rich that soil is. Most of the organic material that went out here was all rabbit poop, pine shavings from baby chicks because they didn't need to be aged quite as much as, older adult chickens. The nitrogen in the baby chicks aren't near as high as the adult ones that needs to be aged. And then just regular old compost and mulch. Now, let's head out to the new property and let me show you this in action. And here we are, 90 miles west in Scott County, our new home. And what you're looking at is the area in which I'm going to be developing this new food forest. So let's jump right in. So first off, I brought plenty of rabbit poop, as well as some compost from the house. And most importantly, alfalfa pellets. And I know you guys had loads of questions about this, so we're going to get into it. So the first step was chopping and dropping everything. This area was loaded with big blue stem grass and goldenrod. Both of those are highly beneficial to the soil, and by chopping and dropping, we didn't disturb the soil at all. So all the root systems were left in there. That leaves living organisms, living fungi. Now, one thing that I was bad about not recording was me laying down the untreated straw. Now, that's really important because if it's been treated with residual herbicides or pesticides, you're going to have problems in your soil. Now, I really only laid that straw down in areas where I didn't have a lot of material to chop and drop via the blue stem grass or the goldenrod. And I do this because that straw will decompose and turn into rich garden soil. It will begin to decompose as these temperatures warm up. Now I go back over top of all that straw with a light layer of compost. And by light, I mean just 1 to 4 inches. Now this compost is loaded with living fungi that's beneficial to the soil, living organisms, and decomposing organisms. And it's packing a punch in nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. So essentially a natural fertilizer. Now, this probably is the back-breaking work. I could have found a better way to spread this, but I'm not going to lie to you. After being cooped up all winter long, this is kind of a fun activity for me in my late 30s, and I'm paying for it now. My hands are sore. But the back, she's holding up. And that's coming from a girl who has scoliosis, okay? But let's back it up and give you some benefits here and some knowledge. That big blue stem grass actually prevents erosion, and it acts as an organic material. Goldenrod improves the soil structure via the roots. It also mines nutrients out of the soil from the deep bottoms of the soil to the top. Almost like dandelions. Dandelions are well known for having deep taproot systems, and they bring water, phosphorus, and calcium up to the surface where your annual garden plants can tap into them. Then I go in again with that untreated straw because this forces more decomposition of any remaining green material that's laying on the ground via grass. And you see a huge uptick in worm activity and decomposition activity. I guess I got tired of that shovel and decided to get with the garden rake. And believe it or not, when you flip that thing over backwards, it tends to spread things a little better. And as I was spreading that compost, I did notice some areas that were pretty bare that had no organic material from the big blue stem grass or the goldenrod that I chopped and dropped. So I just went back out with a little bit more of that untreated straw because you want a pretty good layer. You don't want to have to see any green material through that straw. So that's about how thick you want it. Now, I already know I'm going to get a lot of questions like, will you not have some of the straw reseed itself? Absolutely. But guess what? Chop and drop. That's more organic material. That essentially will add more nutrients to the soil. Compost is bad about stealing nitrogen out of the soil since it's a carbon source.
Yeah.
So those alfalfa pellets are going to go next because they're a nitrogen source, so it won't rob my nitrogen out of the soil. And basically what I was just explaining was with the mulch, not the compost, anytime you add loads and loads of brown material, it will leach the soil of nitrogen because it wants to decompose. That was a huge reasoning for me purchasing the alfalfa pellets, and you can get those pretty cheap. I mean, under $20 for a 40 to 50 pound bag. And I did an entire area of 320 square feet, and I probably could have went a little less and spread it out a little more. But since this is going to be the first year gardening season on this area, and the fact that the soil samples showed that it was highly deficient in nitrogen. So let's recap some of these layers real quick. First, we did a chop and drop. So we just took the mower, mowed everything down. It was mainly the big blue stem grass and the goldenrod. Next, on areas that were pretty bare for chop and drop, I added untreated straw. Then the next layer is the compost. And up next comes the alfalfa pellets. Let me throw down some knowledge about these alfalfa pellets. This is an all-natural fertilizer, okay, and a cheaper one at that. It does contain nitrogen, it does contain phosphorus, and it contains potassium. That is what your NPK stands for. This also speeds up the composting or accelerates it, especially when it's mixed with straw or brown material like the mulch. Hence why I'm putting it down on top of the compost here in just a second, and then adding the mulch on top of that layer. Because again, anytime you lay down a good amount of brown material like mulch, it will begin to leach nitrogen from the soil in any way that it can to decompose. Now, once these alfalfa pellets are laid down, I'm going to cover them with the mulch because we do have a heavy rain coming and all of those little pellets are going to expand. And I don't want no critters out there trying to eat all my alfalfa pellets, guys. So now Joey and I are going in with some really good aged mulch. So it's already trying to decompose itself, which is awesome. That's even better. And I'll end up going back there with another good 2 to 4 inches maybe of some thicker mulch. By thicker, I mean larger chunks. This mulch is also helping with wind or water erosion right now until it's planted in. And it's kind of like sealing the deal. Imagine putting icing on a cake. And since we already have active compost on it with the pellets, the alfalfa pellets and the straw and the mulch, well, this sets up a perfect scenario for it to basically decompose right there on top of the soil. Now, I did another soil sample for soil composition, and what I discovered is my first test wasn't that accurate. I didn't go deep enough down, so when I went about 6 inches down, I discovered that this is all red clay, guys. Some clay soil. And I'm going to tell you, if you have that clay soil like I do, those alfalfa pellets will become your best friend. Now, they are not something you want to dump on a dormant plant or a well-established plant. But if you're working on amending your soil, such as this, absolutely needed. So here she is all finished, 320 square feet. This is just for onions and garlic. I basically plant or set up the garden for what I'm planting first because we can't all do this at once. This is a massive gardening area. So we work a little bit at a time. And I know you noticed that pile of ash I've got because she is a little deficient in phosphorus and potassium, so I'll be spreading that out. And to get this soil, like the soil that is on the rental property, I will be going in every 4 to 6 weeks with a layer of compost and a layer of mulch. Right here in the video, I'm just kind of showing you the sun's alignment because she's still real far in that southern hemisphere. But I tracked her throughout my growing season and she's going to get adequate sun. Now let me give you a close-up at soil level at how much organic material we added. There you go, guys. Now it's time for me to show you true tested results. So this was last year in the spring on the rental property using this exact same no-till method. This is all of my black-seeded Simpson, my romaine, and my tricolor romaine. Next up is my tomato bed that I surrounded with nasturtiums and quite a bit calendula and marigolds, all companion plants. Something else you'll notice is pre-existing cover crop, which was the peas to kind of go ahead and feed the soil full of nitrogen before planting the tomatoes. That's something else that I will do on the new property in any area that I haven't really established any plants in. Since I do have a lot of clay soil, I will use turnips or even beets because these will help break up that compacted soil. And of course, tons of plants out of the legume family. Anytime you have bare naked soil like how I have it sitting out there right now, it's best to grow a cover crop in it. Now, I won't have time to do that for the onion and garlic bed. However, when I prep the tomato bed, as soon as I prep it, I will go back in and plant it full of legumes. And then when I'm ready to plant, I'll just chop and drop that plant material and plant my tomato plants directly in it. One last thing I want to touch on. The reason why I'm so heavy with the compost and the mulch is in Arkansas, our temperatures get well up there in the hundreds sometimes. Very drought-like conditions. All that compost and all of that mulch kind of helps seal the deal and hold that moisture in.